Hello and welcome to Cool Technologies. This is a new segment that I'm starting where I just talk about cool technologies. In this segment, we're going to be discussing Raspberry Pis. So when you think about Raspberry Pi, you may be thinking of something you can consume with your mouth hole. But in this video, we're not talking about those, so put your greasy fingers away and your forks away as well, because we're going to be talking about something much different. So before we get too far into this, I want to break down the outline of this video. One, we're going to be talking about what a Raspberry Pi is. Two, we're going to be talking about the history of the Raspberry Pi. And three, we're going to be talking about the applications you can use with the Raspberry Pi. And of course, the fourth thing we'll be discussing is the conclusion of the video. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what a Raspberry Pi is. A Raspberry Pi is an incredibly cheap, super small mini powerhouse computer. It was designed and manufactured in the UK by the Raspberry Pi Foundation. The initial intent of the Raspberry Pi was to provide a cheap computing device for education. Since then, man, has it evolved. So they have released Raspberry Pis since 2012. We'll be getting more into that when we talk about the history. But the more recent things they have released is the Raspberry Pi 4. The Raspberry Pi 4 comes with 4 gigabytes and 8 gigabytes as well. They also have released the Raspberry Pi 400, which is its own little keyboarding unit. And we'll be getting more into that later in the video. Okay, are you ready for a history lesson? This is going to be brief. At least I'm going to try to make it brief. So the first generation Raspberry Pi Model B was released in February 2020. It was later followed up with a Raspberry Pi Model A. In 2014, the Raspberry Pi Foundation released the Raspberry Pi Model B+. It had much improvements such as design as well as features. Also, later in 2014, they released a newer and improved A+ and another B+ as well. Also, wrapping up 2014, they introduced their very first compute module, which was used for embedded applications. So we're gonna try to speed this up. So February 2015, Raspberry Pi 2 was released, featured 900 MHz 32-bit quad-core ARM Cortex-A7 processor. It had 1 GB of RAM. Also later in 2015, they released one that had 1.2 GHz. Also this year, 2015, the Raspberry Pi Zero was released. So talking about the Raspberry Pi Zero real quick, it's very small and it was released for $5. It's the world's cheapest computer that you can buy to date. Fast forward 2 years, they released the Raspberry Pi Zero W. This was a more enhanced version of the Raspberry Pi Zero, as well as it had Bluetooth and Wi-Fi capabilities. This one was $10. Now we're going to fast forward a year later, they released the Raspberry Pi Zero WH. And the main difference between the WH and the W is the WH had pre-soldered GPIO headers. And we have went up a few years, but I also want to talk about the Raspberry Pi 3, which was released in 2016. I just wanted to get the zeros out of the way. So the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B was released in February 2016. It also had 1.2 GHz processor, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also was the very first Raspberry Pi to introduce USB boot compatibility. On Pi Day 2018, which Pi Day is 3/14 if you don't know, the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B Plus was released. It had a faster 1.4 GHz processor, also a 3 times faster gigabit Ethernet port. Fast forward to June 2019, the Raspberry Pi 4 was released. This guy had a 1.5 GHz processor, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5, full gigabit Ethernet, 2 USB 2.0s and 2 USB 3.0 ports, dual monitor support via a pair of micro HDMI ports, and to top it off, it had 4K support. The last thing you need to know about the Raspberry Pi 4 is that it's powered by USB-C, which was the first Raspberry Pi to be powered via USB-C. Wrapping up the history of the Raspberry Pi, at least up to December 2020, was last month, November 2020. They released the Raspberry Pi 400 kit. Basically, the Raspberry Pi 400 kit derived from a Raspberry Pi 4, but was overclocked even higher than the stock 1.5 to 1.8 gigahertz. So the Raspberry Pi 400, if you could think of it this way, they basically took a Raspberry Pi 4, put it into a keyboard format, and they kind of moved around components for better heating distribution, and it's clocked to a higher speed than the stock Raspberry Pi 4. Okay, so what are the applications you can use with the Raspberry Pi 4? Alright, so I made a list of things that I've done with the Raspberry Pi. This is not my full list. This is just a highlight of things that I've done that were pretty fun. So let's get into it. I'm going to be looking off to the side because I have my list here. So I have game emulation, 4K home theater entertainment system utilizing applications like Plants and Kodi. I have portable hacking device. You can put Kali Linux on this guy. You have auto print, which is what one of my, let me show you that. Yeah, let me show you that before I get any further. So over here, I have 3 Raspberry Pis. I'm gonna talk about these in a minute, but I have a 4th one currently controlling my Ender 3. I use auto print on that. It is a lifesaver, life-changing when you can control your printer through the network on your computer when your printer is off in another location. And I have mine in the storage room, which is pretty far from where I'm at now. It'll be a pain for me to go and move micro SD cards just to get a print going. Talking about these guys, I've had just about every Raspberry Pi. These are the only ones I could find. I did some moving and I've got some in storage. I don't know where they're at, but I need to find them. So this is my Raspberry Pi 3. This is the Model B. There it is right there, nothing special. These guys are my Raspberry Pi 4s. This is the Canakit. If you want to buy a kit, I'll have them in the description below. But the Canakit comes with a case, the Raspberry Pi. It also comes with a charger for USB Type-C. These are the ports I was talking about, the HDMI minis. And this kit comes with a fan. With the Raspberry Pi 4s, they do get pretty hot. And most of them you'll want to get a fan with it. This is my second case. This is probably my favorite of them all. This is the Vilros, and let's see if you can hear this. That's metal. This guy is sturdy, it's durable. So I would not have any problem putting this guy through some rigorous activities. And I wouldn't have to worry about this guy breaking. I mean, that's some hard. I don't know what type of metal this is, but I mean, it's hurt my knuckle hitting it. But this case comes with the same thing. It comes with the case. It comes with the fan. This also comes with the heat sinks. So there's 3 heat sinks it comes with. I would open up the case to show you, but I gotta put it together. I don't feel like opening it right now. It comes with a charger as well. It also comes with, this kit also comes with a mini HDMI to HDMI adapter. And I'll have this kit below as well. These Raspberry Pis, if you buy them separately, will be about $35 to $45, but the kits do cause it to go higher. And this one was well worth it. I think I spent like $80 to $90 on this one. Do not regret it. And we're going to talk about what I can do with 2 Raspberry Pi 4s right now. So getting back to my list. Sorry, I wanted to show you that. I'm going to show you that at the beginning of the video. But let's move on. So we have a home NAS, network attached storage. You can set up a NAS in your home, on your home network that you can access, move files, and make things much easier to access around the house. Also, if you're in DevOps or if you're a system admin like I am, then the term Jenkins probably rings a bell. You can also use these guys for Jenkins. You can put Jenkins on these, use them for automation, which is really cool, really handy when you're developing and working on deploying certain applications. Also, if you have more than one Raspberry Pi, like I have 2 Raspberry Pi 4s, I can use these guys for Kubernetes clustering. And something I don't have here, but I do plan on doing, is you can actually put VMware on these guys. I'll put a tutorial out there for that. Also, Pi-hole. What Pi-hole is an ad blocking technology you can put on your Raspberry Pis. It does great for blocking ads. It's probably the best ad blocking thing you can put on your home network. I've tried a lot of things, from DNS changes to using certain apps, and I think the best way to do it is through Pi-hole. I'll do a tutorial on that as well. And I could keep on. I mean, I could probably make this video 40 minutes long if I keep naming everything I've done with a Raspberry Pi. So you get the point, I'm gonna stop there. If you do not have a Raspberry Pi at your home, you really seriously should consider getting one. The applications, the things you can do with these guys are endless. If you don't get one from the learning aspect, just get one just to have. I mean, you never know when a project's gonna come up, when something you see that you wanna do can be done with a Raspberry Pi. And just to give you an example, there's farmers that are actually buying Raspberry Pis to use them in their garden. There's people buying these instead of a security system. You can use these as security boxes. Very easy to do, very functional. You can have a camera server where you can access multiple Raspberry Pis, and you can see you can basically set up a whole security system with Raspberry Pis and view it from a remote monitor. So also look at it this way. Another thing you can do, if you want to just buy one and have one on standby, at the very least, these guys make very great emulation systems. So yeah, so the applications are endless. All right guys, well that's the video. If you don't have one, definitely pick one up. It's well worth the money. You can get one from between $35 all the way up to $120, depending on what you get. Don't let the price scare you, because the $120 would be something like the Raspberry Pi 4 8GB edition with the Vilros kit. I'm gonna have links in the description below. You can go through and click those. Those are affiliate links, so if you do buy a Raspberry Pi, it will help me out, will help the channel out. I'm going to be steering this channel in more of a tech-based channel. I'll still do videos on my 3D printing adventures. I'm really passionate about technology and helping people. That's what got this channel started, so I want to get back to the basics of this channel, and I think you guys will like it as well. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate you hopping on and watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.